It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here for a little TIE Fighter Renegades. We are back, baby. And when I say we, I mean me. And of course, my brother, Robin Freebeard. Man, welcome back to TIE Fighter Renegades.
Beep, bop, boop.
Oh, no. Woo! Are we even? I mean, I support your statement. Let me make that abundantly clear.
And
wow.
Hey, listen, folks. I mean, like, to everybody out there, Z's, A's, theirs, theys, thems, and everything in between. I'm with you. Just as long as you're not bullying other people.
Yeah. It's like, I don't care what stripe anybody is, as long as they're not an authoritarian or a bully, I mean, and I repeat myself. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Rob says to me, and I can edit this if you want. He says to me before we hit record, he says, Brian, we're going to open it up with something provocative. I'm like, what is it? And he's like, oh, you'll know when you hear it. And then there it is. Wow. Do we want to talk about that for a minute or not?
I mean, we could. Yeah. I mean, I totally don't mind.
All right. Well, what the hell? Let's do it. So, because, I mean, we were going to open up talking about Star Wars. We've got some Dune to get into, and we are going to get into that. Absolutely. But really, the rest of what we've got is largely Star Wars here. So I guess we'll just open it up talking about, well, actually, we should be reviewing this. I didn't put it in the show notes, but this is, I guess, a good segue into that because we got a season 2 trailer for The Mandalorian, which drops, is it the 30th of October? Mm-hmm. I believe that's the date for it. Well, I mean, that just hit a couple days ago, but just briefly before, a day or so, or maybe even hours before that dropped, one of the show's stars, and I would argue really it's shining light in a very real way, Gina Carano, she got into a bit of a Twitter feud, or should I say Twitter came after her. I don't really think it was the other way around in any way.
No, she was not looking for trouble.
No. So there was some confusion and concern that people thought she was like mocking the use of pronouns within Twitter handles because she asked that, what is it with everybody doing this? And then, the Twitter mob, which is an absolute very real thing, just came after her. I mean, I'll say this, like, I mean, and I've been a fan of Gina Carano, like back when she was on with my man Mike O'Hearn, back when she was on American Gladiators. I just thought she was fantastic there because she looked so legit. And when her acting career started, I was like, yeah, go for it. And I think in an industry where there are very few kind, genuine people, I think she's one of them.
Absolutely.
And people have given her a lot of flack for maybe they don't think she's as great an actor or whatever else. But then ironically, and I think she's a fine actress. Okay. But ironically, I think it's that, like, that's it, folks. She can't lie. She can't, if you feel like she can't act, then that's kind of proving the point. She's a genuine person. She genuinely cares. You know what I mean? And so it just shows how horrible things are on Twitter and online in general, when someone like that gets attacked. What are your thoughts, Rob?
I mean, I agree with you completely. And I think it's a shame that she, unwittingly just basically stepped in a big old pile of spooks.
Mm-hmm. Aha. Well said. Yeah. I mean, and everybody thought she was making fun of them when she put beep, bop, boop in her, in her Twitter handle or whatever. And I mean, I don't agree. I think she was, having fun with it and whatever else. She's clearly a person. I mean, if you do follow her online, she's not a conservative. And she's taken shit from it's not like the tech giants or anything are supportive of her necessarily because, she posted a provocative pic on Instagram not long ago and it got taken down by Instagram. And it was a picture of her, topless. So not a conservative, folks. Like she's not, I don't think she's any kind of alt-righty or anything along those lines. And you can just tell from her social media posts, she's been going through some shit, like she's and man, the last thing she needs is the Twitter mob on top of her. I thought it was absolutely outrageous. So,
well, I mean, I told Brian that I don't even understand what the motivation for people who are in the public eye these days to even be on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, because it just seems like a net negative.
Right. No, yeah.
Unless you're Chris Evans.
Yeah. I mean, that's the guy who can do no wrong, right?
Apparently, yeah. I mean, he's got talking about another guy who doesn't have any pronouns in his profile, and he's got basically all Twitter white knighting him. And I don't have anything against the guy, but it's a little hypocritical.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know. Same here. I can't grasp why. Like if you're, doing, because look, Gina's probably doing great or has to be doing great money with The Mandalorian alone, to say nothing of anything else that she's working on or whatever. I get the argument from some people where they're like, well, I got to be on social media because I got to build up my presence. I got to build up my business. I got to do this, blah, 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 regardless of whether or not that's true. Like, look, when you've got it and you've made it, just like get out of the public eye as much as you can, So I kind of wonder if like Disney or if contractually somehow they have to be online to some degree. I don't know. Yeah.
That might be the case, but I mean, like this whole argument that you have to be on social media is just so fallacious to me. Because sure. We had like arguably much more famous stars in the past, long before social media existed, and they got on just fine without it.
Yeah, I agree.
I would argue that people are less famous today because of social media.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge subject that we could get into. I mean, the only person I think I've ever seen like actually use social media really well, and it's probably not helping their career, not with Hollywood anyway. It might be helping with their, appeasing or not appeasing, but how the fans view them. I mean, like John Boyega, that guy's a stick of dynamite on social media, man. I mean, and he's dropping some truth too. I mean, like, wow, so, he can kind of pull it off, but very few people can do it the way he does it. I don't know. It's a mess. Social media is a mess. And I really do hope that it ultimately ends up being a fad. We'll look back on it in 20 years and say, wow, why were we bothering with that? That's the only thing I can hope for. Yeah.
I mean, that here again, that's something we could talk about for a really long time. Sadly, I don't see it going that way, but yeah, that would be a nice world to live in. Yeah.
A world without social media. Imagine that. Well, anyway, I don't want to speak for Rob, but I don't know that he'd disagree with me. But TIE Fighter Renegades certainly stands with Gina Carano. I just think a genuine person and someone who has all the actual ability in the world, especially in an industry where most people are CGI'd and fake in a million ways. I think she is real. She's got, physical, all the talent you could want.
To be honest with you, I mean, that got me interested. Her behavior outside of the show and her interactions with the fan community got me more excited about the Mandalorian.
Right.
I mean, not that I needed to be any more excited because, this is already there was already great talent behind the show, but it was it was going from like 10 to 11.
Yeah, I mean, and she's constantly resharing artwork that fans make. I mean, it's the sweetest thing. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Her interaction. I agree. In fact, I can't think of another person in Star Wars who's more interact. The only person I can think of, it would be wow, that's terrible that I'm blanking on her name.
Ashley Eckstein?
No, well, she's great. She's certainly great. But I was thinking Iden Versio there.
Garankar? Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible that anyway. I love Iden Versio, the character. So
yeah. But then again, she kind of like, faded into the background after the game came out. So
yeah. Well,
I mean,
and that might be smart for her because that game got a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
And stuff that is well beyond her control as well.
Right. Well, and they killed her character too. So, I mean, there's really not much for her to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which, well, we'll save that nugget for a conversation we'll get to in a minute. But why don't we go ahead and get into The Mandalorian Season 2, get a little review of that trailer. Did you like what you saw, Rob? I mean, was this excitement?
It wasn't as exciting as the first season trailer, but it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw like some of that X-Wing action in that trailer, was phenomenal. I was like, oh yeah, that's Star Wars. that was really cool.
And the biker scouts.
Yep. That was a nice
an
touch.
Actual chase scene,
Yeah. Now, you and I were talking, if you don't mind me bringing this up, you and I were talking a bit. Actually, I think it was in the Sovryn Tech Telegram group, because this does the hint and theme of this trailer is that like, oh, we're going to have to run into the Jedi, or we're going to have to find the Jedi. And I think you took a bit of issue with the seemingly galactic amnesia around the Jedi. Like, wait, shouldn't he have been alive, or shouldn't the Mandalorian have been alive while the Clone Wars are happening? Shouldn't he know the Jedi or thing? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like we see the scenes when he was a kid, and like his village or whatever it was being attacked by the Trade Federation droids.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah. And I'm not just talking, I mean, like, I can accept to a certain degree the galactic amnesia because the Jedi couldn't have been everywhere in the galaxy, even at their height. But even then, like, somebody who was like, directly affected by the Clone Wars should know who the Jedi are.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because in the flashback scene from season 1, the Mandalorian, I mean, he did see a super battle droid. Yeah. I mean, that's right out of the Clone Wars. It's exactly what he saw. So, I mean, you raise a good point about that. I had I didn't bat back, but I had posited that, of course, pandemics are nothing new to anyone now. But lately I've been studying quite a bit about pandemics that have occurred in the past, particularly like the Spanish flu in the early 20th century. And it is amazing that it basically appears that people just tried to get it completely out of their memory. Like they just stopped, no matter how many millions the Spanish flu killed, they just stopped talking about it and pretended that it never happened. And, the Galactic Empire becoming a thing or the Jedi getting wiped out. I mean, I think a similar case could be made, kind of like, like we were saying, the galactic amnesia, where it's just like, okay, let's just pretend they never existed because that was such a traumatic event. Go ahead. And I don't disagree with what you're putting forth. Another good example would be like the Irish potato famine. Right. Yes. Yeah. Great point.
But the thing is like that, in my opinion, and from my observance, that process takes at least 2 generations.
Okay. Oh, for them to like really forget. And we're talking only 20, 30 years. Yeah. Right?
We're talking 1 generation.
Yeah.
We're talking about a kid who, like I said, was directly affected by the Clone Wars. His parents were killed by, the Trade Federation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, like with the Spanish flu, it was pretty immediate, but I get your point. Because like I had said to you, I've always felt that, okay, for people to forget about the Jedi between episode 3 and episode 4, only like 19 years or 20 years, like that is a stretch, so I've never been totally comfortable with that either. But I don't know, maybe the way that they execute it, maybe it'll work. Maybe they'll explain it in a way that somehow makes sense. Maybe they're talking about the Jedi, with 2 eyes at the end, kind of like we got in the old canon with, what was it? Was it Dawn of the Jedi? Was that the comic series and novel?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Where you find out that Jedi was like not a species, but sort of like it was the older version of the Order, I guess.
Right. Well, it was an order that had both, it was pre the split between the Sith and the Jedi.
Right.
And you had both dark side and light side users within the same, religion.
Yeah, it was more of a gray order, but it was definitely the originator, or kind of the originator. We don't need to talk about that, but anyway, because that book series frustrated the fuck out of me because they didn't really explain the origin. Basically, you just had like these stone ships flying around.
Right.
Anyway, it was just dumb. But okay, so yeah, The Mandalorian season 2. I'm excited. I grant you, I agree with you, Rob. It wasn't as exciting as the season 1 trailer when that first dropped, but I definitely liked what I saw. Yeah. So speaking of something that is a bit of a surprise that I liked what I saw, and we'll see what you have to say on it, Rob. We did get in the past month a couple of, a trailer and then what's being called a CG short. Is in a little short film about 6 minutes, but we got a couple of videos from EA Star Wars on YouTube. They are linked in the show notes if you want to see them for yourselves, and I recommend that you do. We got a single player trailer for Star Wars Squadrons, which that's coming out, October 2nd? That's coming out in just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
The single player trailer, I did not have high expectations for this, but then I watched it and I just said, "Oh, holy shit! This looks pretty good."
Yeah.
I'm on board. It basically looked like X-Wing or TIE Fighter or X-Wing Alliance. I mean, the gameplay looked just like that. And then we got some, some little cutscenes with Wedge was in it, Wedge Antilles, among other things. I thought it worked. I saw that single player trailer and I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to pick this up yet, but fuck, that looked great. I mean, what did you think about the single player trailer, Rob?
It looks good. My expectations are still tempered to a degree.
Sure.
Because I do know that this game, especially for the price point it's coming in, is going to be somewhat short on content. And as yet, EA is saying that there's going to be no additions, either free or paid for DLC afterwards. So it's going to be kind of a short experience. And that would really be my only criticism, but it does look like a good game. So I'm still not going to pre-order it. I'm still holding to my plan where I'm going to just sign up for Origin All Access for the month of October and play the game that way. So I'm only spending $15. If I really like it, then I'll plop down my $40. If I don't, then, I'll wait till it goes on sale.
Yeah. I wonder if this is going to end up being available on Steam. I know EA has been porting a lot, or not porting,
it's already on Steam.
Oh, okay, got it.
The listing for it.
Aha, okay. I probably saw that at the end of the trailer, but anyway, that's pretty much that's pretty much how I feel about it. I mean, I loved what I saw. It definitely looked like classic space combat sim, like we get in the 90s when that became the thing. And I don't want to say it was like super exciting. I think they spent too much time with that Leia narrative in it. But it was a good trailer, far better than I was expecting. Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, what did blow my mind, and you shared this with me first, and you said, no matter how good or bad the game is, at least we've got this. They released,
this is cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They released a little movie, mini film, all computer generated. Using whatever, and I wouldn't say it's the in-game engine, but using the rendering engine for the game that they have. What was it called? Hunter? Was that the name of it? I think. Anyway, it is a little CG preview movie for Star Wars Squadrons. This was awesome. I mean, this was so awesome. Go ahead.
And here's this is the thing where I wasn't expecting anything from this at all. I was like, okay, I've got a few minutes of spare time. I'll check this out. And this thing blew my socks off. Yeah.
I mean, talk about, I know I keep using the word exciting, but boy, talk about exciting. This was exciting. It's called Hunted, not Hunter. And I mean, again, about 7 minutes, I think, total. And what you're getting in it's clearly after Return of the Jedi, which is, we know where the game is set anyway. And you're following a character. Is it Captain Grig? Was that his name? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
He's a character that you also see in the single player trailer.
Yeah.
On the Imperial side.
I think he's the player character. If I'm
well,
maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, in the single player trailer, he talks to you.
Oh, okay.
The player. So
okay.
So I think he might be your commanding officer, something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what a cool guy. I mean,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, give me your thoughts on this. Give me your favorites, your breakdown.
Oh man, I just like I don't even know where to start because the whole thing is just like really cool from start to finish. I mean, like, you know, back when they were first announced Battlefront 2, and they were talking about having a game, quote, for the first time, even though, you know, listeners of this show know better, you know, the first time we would be getting a game from the Imperial point of view. Right. And we got like all really excited and hyped up, and it turned out to be just a massive dud.
Yeah.
Because they switched sides within the first couple of missions of the game. Whereas this trailer, like this, like if this is representative of what's in the game, then this is actually delivering on what Battlefront 2 promised.
Yeah. I got to ask, I mean, considering that, because in the single player trailer, it's centered around an Imperial mission. This movie is, you know, certainly an Imperial movie, if we can say that. Do you think they're trying to make up for that? Do you think they're trying to appease fans who got their hopes quashed with Battlefront 2?
I certainly hope so. I'm here again. You know, we talked about this before, and one of the writers involved was also a writer on Battlefront 2, who had some not nice things to say about, you know, representing the Imperial point of view. So hopefully he's just writing the Rebel side of the campaign, and he has no involvement with the Imperial side of things. Because personally, I kind of lay a lot of what happened with Battlefront 2 on him, because he doesn't want to, you know, lionize, quote, space fascists.
Yeah. Well, EA must be feeling differently, because I mean, this was like the Hunted CG short movie. I mean, was basically a love letter to Imperial action. I mean, it really was. Yeah, I thought this was brilliant. I mean, and the way that, you know, you're seeing some Starfighter, shall I say, action that in style that I haven't seen in a long time. I mean, like going into the atmosphere of that planet, felt very much like, admittedly, it was hitting some nostalgia notes for me, because it was reminding me of like Rebel Assault 2, where you're flying a TIE fighter around in a canyon and everything. It was just, the action was so well done. The battle scenes were so well done. And go ahead.
The trailer had just like really great tension, especially like when he goes and he tries to save the pilot of that TIE bomber. And how great was that? You know, like you see, like, you know, an Imperial pilot, you know, everybody like has this impression of Imperial pilots just kind of being, you know, mindless drones, and it's all about accomplished mission. And then you have this one squadron leader who actually cares about, you know, the other pilots in his squadron. So that was cool. You know, like here again, this was something that Battlefront 2 was promising, because they were using that whole tagline of, quote, heroes on both sides. And we really didn't get that at all, but we're getting it in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved when, I mean, I kind of don't want to give the ending away, but when he just says, or, you know, someone says the war is over, and he says,
war is over, imp.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says, not for me, you know, at the end. That was so cool. Yeah. I mean, this was really, again, just really slick, a great little story. Everything about it, I just loved.
And they were like, they paid attention. Like, he doesn't take his helmet off until he's in atmosphere.
Right. And then he knows he doesn't need it, and he just pops it off, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, music was great. I kind of wonder who put this together. I don't know if it was one of the writers or if it was just like the dev team.
From what I understand, John Knoll had some involvement in this.
Oh, no. Well, point being, somebody who loves Star Wars and really understands Star Wars was writing this.
Yeah.
Whoever it was. Because I was finding it funny just how much concentration there was on the Imperial side across these videos. And I was thinking, I was like, the writers, like you had mentioned earlier, Rob, the writers might hate, the Empire, but clearly the devs know where the real action is. And they're probably all fans of TIE Fighter anyway, the game. So, yeah, it showed. And it does. I do feel cautiously optimistic about this game now, because, these were two really, really solid videos.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So check those out. The links are in the show notes, folks, if you want to give them a watch. I already downloaded the movie Hunted from Star Wars Squadrons, because like that's going into my Star Wars folder, man, of like great canon to have access to. It was just so much fun. So, all right. Want to move on to some other stuff, Rob?
Sure.
Let's do it. So speaking of, well, maybe not so great canon, but canon all the same.
Brian's Bane.
Yes. Yes. My Bane. In
His
the past,
burden.
Because I still do it, folks. Rob even asked you guys, right? He even asked you, he said, so do you, the listeners, do you really want Brian to have to read every fucking Star Wars book that comes out? And, well, I still do, bottom line. Okay. Regardless of what anybody said, I still do it. And so I've got 3. We don't have to spend a ton of time on these at all. We'll probably, the third one we'll talk about a bit, because it was one that I was genuinely excited for and looking forward to. And it was the one of the rare times where it's not the bane of my existence. And it's like, okay, I want to read this book. I am excited to read this book. And you could probably guess which one that is. It's a book that was delayed throughout 2020, that being the new Thrawn book by Timothy Zahn, but we'll save that one. We'll save the best for last, shall we say. Let's open it up with Poe Dameron Freefall. This was a book. It came out in August, early August. It was a surprise. Like, there was no big announcement that this was going to be coming out that I could recall. I just happened to catch it when I typed in Star Wars in the Audible app. And so, of course, I used my Audible credit towards it, listened to it, by Alex Segura, who I don't know has written anything else within Star Wars. If he has, it hasn't been anything major. This is certainly on the more young adult or junior novel side of things. It all has to do about a very young Poe Dameron. I had made the statement, it might have been in the last episode of TIE Fighter Renegades that we recorded, Rob. I had said that, well, that whole theory going around that Disney is going to reboot cancel the sequel trilogy. This book would be one of the deciding factors on whether or not they planned on doing that. Like, are they going to hint at things within it where, okay, Poe Dameron might have a different future? Nothing of the sort was in this book. This book was incredibly basic. There wasn't a whole lot of interesting information at all within it. And it was just, I don't know. I mean, you got to experience Poe Dameron and his, one-time girlfriend that you get to basically experience somewhat in The Rise of Skywalker, Zoe Bliss, of course. And so you got to see sort of more of their relationship within this. And I guess it fleshed that out. But really, this book did nothing. I mean, it was fine. The writing was okay, but it's another one of those cases where there's nothing really like especially Star Wars-y about it at all. So I wasn't terribly impressed by that. Rob, I know you didn't even bother with it, man.
No. I mean, I'm sorry, folks, but like I'm still in the throes of like Star Wars burnout. So like I honestly didn't read any of these, and I do plan on reading one of them, but I want to be in the state of mind where I could really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but even if you were in that state of mind, I don't think there's anything really to appreciate with. Yeah. All right. Here, actually, there's one great thing about the Poe Dameron book. and that is you get a lot of Babu Frick in it. And Babu, I think Babu Frick is really cute myself. Like that was the only really great thing in Rise of Skywalker. So you get that, but that's not really worth an entire book. You know, like that's not enough to bother reading this entire book. But if you happen to love Babu Frick, maybe you'll want to read Poe Dameron and Freefall. Anyway, I think Rob's rolling his eyes. So we're
yeah. There's nothing great in Rise of Skywalker. Sorry.
Wow, those are some harsh words, but we'll I'm sure we'll get into some of that when we get to one of our later stories here. Anyway, the next book is a collection we knew was coming for a little while, and it's Star Wars: The Clone Wars Stories of Light and Dark. This is a collection of short stories that basically add color to Clone Wars episodes that already exist. The last story in the collection is an original story. All the other, it's a short story collection. All the other short stories in it are just like expanding upon episodes that you have already seen. Now, when it gets into the character of Maul, some of these are a little bit interesting, but this is just an incredibly pointless read overall, in my opinion. And the only original story in it is actually by, I mean, and it wasn't bad. It also, though, wasn't worth the price of admission and wasn't like really, really great. And I don't want to, knock Dave Filoni's wife or anything, because her writing was fine. And the story has to do with Mother Townsend, and that's nice. The last one, it's called Bug is the title, and it's by E. Ann Convery. I'm going to guess that's how I pronounce her last name, but that's actually Dave Filoni's wife. And I mean, again, it was fine, but there's nothing really here where it's like, wow, man, I can't wait to pick that up off the shelf or anything like that. I mean, there's just no excitement whatsoever like that. And the sales numbers for both this book and the Poe Dameron book, I think, reflect that a lot of people must feel like I feel, where it's like, this wasn't something that, I have to have it. I have to have it. Did you any comment on this collection, Rob? I know you didn't read it.
Well, I mean, you're touching on something that we're going to get to. That's what I'll say. It's disappointing to hear that this is what your opinion was, because depending on what you were going to say, I might have actually picked this one up. But as it stands right now, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's just it felt very forgettable. Even the last story. Go ahead.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah. Well, and to contrast this, the next book that we're going to talk about, which is Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising, which is like book one in a trilogy that Timothy Zahn has apparently been guaranteed. It was like the number 16 best-selling book, just best-selling book, on whatever, American list or, whatever in other countries. I'm sure it was somewhat similar, but on, US lists, it was the number 16 best-selling book out of any kind of book, Star Wars or otherwise. And I think that's an interesting story in and of itself, that, no other Star Wars book really ever touches, probably the top 100 of best-selling books. Go ahead.
Didn't Heir to the Empire make it on the New York Times bestsellers?
A correction. I meant with the new canon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, now in the old EU, there's plenty of books that ended up on the New York Times bestseller list. They cracked the 100 on the regular. Right. I mean, that was not uncommon at all. But with the new canon, in fact, I challenge anybody listening to this, go to a bookstore, go to Barnes and Noble or whatever, have your mask on, I guess, but go to Barnes and Noble and look at the Star Wars books. I guarantee you none of them are listed as a New York Times bestseller, and then look at the old EU books, and they're all going to or many of them are going to say that. So it's very telling that the only book that can crack into a best-selling list for Star Wars is a Thrawn book. Any thoughts on that, Rob?
It's very indicative of the problem with the way that Disney treats the extraneous material, including the books, especially the books. This is why, I do want to, read Thrawn Ascendancy. But at the same time, I'm a little trepidatious because, to be bluntly honest with you, EU Thrawn is miles better than Disney Thrawn.
Yeah.
They're certainly going more into depth into his character, but the scope and the scale of the Thrawn trilogy is so much bigger than anything that Disney has done with their books.
Yes.
And while you can admire Thrawn's, ability and intelligence in the Disney books, I can't but help feel that he's been neutered.
He definitely does not feel as threatening as he did in 1991.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I agree with you on that.
And I don't like that feeling.
Right. Now, it's interesting that Timothy Zahn, in an interview, basically, he came out. I mean, now Timothy Zahn has nothing to worry about. This is a guy who, I mean, he's made it as an author, right?
Yeah. The publishers come to him. Yeah,
exactly. He can write whatever he wants. He said in an interview, and he can say whatever he wants, which is my point here. But he said in an interview, he said, if you're just a fan of the Heir to the Empire trilogy, you can enjoy this book because it can play as a prequel to that, to the Heir to the Empire trilogy. So even if you don't like the new canon, he's written it in such a way so that it fits with the Thrawn of the Heir to the Empire trilogy. And I just found that fascinating that he even felt like it was worthwhile to say that.
Yeah.
If he didn't see, shall we say, Trouble in Paradise at Lucasfilm Books or, Del Rey, whatever, Disney, publishing this stuff, I can't imagine why he'd even bother trying to appease anyone, from that was a fan of Heir to the Empire. Right. I was really, really shocked by that he was willing to make that statement. And it's a statement that can be true because this entire book, and again, it is part of a trilogy, which he also stated that he liked that he got to do a guaranteed trilogy because now he can make his own characters and he can really build stuff out. And he's sort of like he did with the original Heir to the Empire trilogy, right?
Right.
He doesn't have to confine everything to one book. This book takes place all in the unknown regions. It does cross-reference other Thrawn books in the new canon, which is fine. In fact, I guess spoiler alerts, but I don't think I'm giving anything away here really. But you get to relive the scene where Anakin Skywalker is trying to pronounce Thrawn's name, which was hilarious the first time it happened in the books. But it all takes place elsewhere. And there's some interesting nuggets of information within it that I found to be really fascinating.
So do you feel that that Timothy Zahn's statement holds up? I mean, I recognize that this is just the first book in a trilogy and we don't know how it's all going to play out. But I mean, do you feel that was an honest statement or was there a little bit of marketing involved there?
No, I think it was a very honest statement. I feel like, being a huge Thrawn fan, which I am, I think it does work. I think it still fits very well into that. Now, if you're somebody that hates the prequels, and you don't like Anakin Skywalker as was presented by George Lucas, okay, maybe then it doesn't hold as true. But as long as you don't mind Matt Lanter's, Anakin Skywalker, and you like or you at least accept the prequels more so than the sequels, than the sequel trilogy. I think it sits perfectly well and has some very, very interesting. I mean, do you mind if I bring up a couple tidbits, Rob? I don't want to spoil
go
it
ahead.
for you.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing is that the Chiss are very aware of the Sith, and they have some kind of history with the Sith, long ago. They know something about them. Yeah, which I'm sure we're going to get some payoff on that in this trilogy, because it's otherwise it's just a weird thing to bother mentioning. The other thing is that, so we learned about, I think it was in Thrawn Allegiance, we learn about how the Chiss have to navigate the unknown regions using like a not telepaths, but kind of a psionic subspecies within the Chiss.
Yeah, but they're force sensitive.
Right, they're force sensitive.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is we never really get a name for what those are. Now we have a name for what they are. And granted, it would be in Chiss, but it translates as Skywalker.
Oh,
so
wow.
they're called Skywalkers. And I'm sure that Zahn has something in mind for that. And when the scene happens where you relive in Allegiance, the moment where Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker are talking and Anakin's trying to pronounce his name, Thrawn recognizes that Anakin's last name is Skywalker, and he does find it strange that he has a last name similar to, this entire subspecies within.
Yeah, well, I seem to recall in even in the Padme book during that scene that he was a bit taken back when he met Skywalker and learned his name.
Right. Yeah. So there's something there. And I'm very intrigued to explore where that's really going to go. So yeah, I thought this was a very good book. It actually read a lot like Timothy Zahn's Conquerors trilogy, which not a whole lot of people have read, wasn't the best received, but I loved those books. And I mean, you really get especially now the audiobook doesn't give you any of this, but when you get the actual novel, there's like explanations and everything. It's like you were looking at the appendix in Dune or something to explain all of these different aspects of the Chiss ascendancy. Exactly. I agree with you. It's awesome.
I always love
have that kind of world building.
Yeah.
Right. So you get a lot of that, and Chiss civilization is really, really fascinating. So I loved it because I mean, there's other than Anakin for a brief moment, there's really no humans in it. You get to explore a whole other side of the Star Wars universe, literally. It worked for me. It really, really worked for me, and I can't wait for the next two books. Go ahead.
That's all the endorsement that I need, and the fact that last bit that you mentioned. That's, that little bit extra of world building is always something that tells you the author cares and is invested in the universe he either created or is working in.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, if they're letting Timothy Zahn have some fun with some deep Star Wars history, you can't go wrong there because he did great with Outbound Flight. Everything he did in the old EU was fantastic, historical exposition of the Star Wars galaxy. So if he gets to do more of that, I'm there.
It's kind of apropos, too, because when he was writing the Thrawn trilogy, he kind of had an appendices of his own that was in the form of the West End Games role-playing books.
Yes. Yeah.
And the fact that he's turned around and he's now writing that kind of material, that's really cool.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, I mean, I only scratched the surface of some of the revelations, I guess I'll say, in the book, but very worthwhile. Even if, and I do agree with Timothy Zahn's statement, even if you're just somebody who's like, okay, I like the old EU. I'm not bothering with the new canon at all. This is a book that you can get into if you're just into the old EU. I'll say this, and Rob, you're probably going to love what I'm going to say. I mean, I don't know, about a month ago, like I just started typing out. I said, okay, here is my headcanon of Star Wars. Very little Disney work to be found in this. I mean, it basically had like the Heir to the Empire trilogy is the real sequel trilogy. It had Dark Empire in it, the Dark Empire trilogy. It had Crimson Empire in it, which Kir Kanos is one of the rare characters. I mean, I almost put him up there with Thrawn as far as like really, really great characters. And I also ended up putting in the Jedi Knight games, putting in all of Kyle Katarn's work and everything.
Well, those have books too. So I was actually about to bring that up.
Yeah, exactly. And so like all of that, and the original trilogy. And then I did toss in later on, like on this list, and I hadn't added to it for like a month. I was like, yeah, Thrawn Ascendancy, that's in there, because it worked. It was really cool. Even with the Anakin Skywalker scene, I think it still really, really worked. So yeah, I mean that's how much I enjoyed this book, is that I was willing to put it into my headcanon. I mean, there's other stuff in that list. I'm sure actually some listeners would probably really love to see that list, like the Hand of Thrawn duology is in there as well, because I thought that was a great idea, that like there's an entire Thrawn empire getting built. All that kind of stuff was really awesome. And
that's the other thing I was curious about, is whether or not he was going to actually use any of the ideas from those books in this new trilogy.
I would love it if, I mean, because we don't know Thrawn's fate at the end of Star Wars Rebels. If they're setting things up to where, we get like a Thrawn empire that ends up coming back, that'd be fucking awesome. Kind of like in the Hand of Thrawn duology from the old EU, that'd be great. Well,
I mean, one of the rumors out there, and I really hope this is true, but the rumor is that one of the next animated series they're working on is a series about Ezra and Thrawn and Ahsoka and Sabine.
I could get behind that, and I just fanboying. I would love, what was it? Legacies, right? Star Wars Legacy, the comic books that took place 100 years in the future after Return of the Jedi. In that, you had where Baron Fell ended up starting his own empire, and you had the Imperial Jedi Knights,
right?
All really, really cool stuff. I mean, boy, if we end up in a future where Thrawn has effectively created his own empire, like the Hand of Thrawn, and then Ezra's like the head of the Imperial Jedi Knights, I'd be fine with that. I'd be very intrigued. I don't think that's the way it's going to go, but I'd love it.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the way it's going to go either. But yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, like bring it together, because you got it. In my opinion, go ahead.
But like according to Kathleen Kennedy, there's no source material for any of this stuff. So I mean, obviously, that's never going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing. Like, for post Return of the Jedi Star Wars, we need a third faction to clean up the bullshit that got created with the sequel trilogy, in my opinion. But I don't know if they're willing to go that route. I think that's why The Mandalorian exists, because it is a third faction, where you don't have to deal with the fucking storyline mess that is the First Order / Empire, and then the New Republic. But
right.
Okay, I forgot to mention this earlier with Star Wars Squadrons. We do get to see Rey Sloane in that. I thought that was awesome.
Yes, and Hera.
Yeah, and Hera. I wouldn't mind, and this is what I was going to say earlier, and I just want to get it in. I wouldn't mind if we saw Iden Versio in Star Wars Squadrons as well. I think that'd be a nice touch. But I don't know if that'll happen. So
yeah,
anyway.
I don't know either. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So I mean, any other thoughts? She
would be on the other side by then, wouldn't she?
Yeah, well, that's what I was kind of wondering about.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think so never mind. I don't need her in it. I don't want Rebel Versio. I want Imperial Versio.
Right.
But I mean, any thoughts on the Thrawn book, Rob? Anything you want to share on that?
No, I mean, like I kind of came out with just, I don't have anything critical to say of the book, obviously, because I haven't read it.
Sure.
I think it's just a shame that the situation with the entire situation with all the Star Wars books right now is they're very much on a leash, and I don't like it, because that leash is way too tight.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, maybe that's why the Thrawn book worked, because Timothy Zahn was in the unknown regions. He could write whatever he wanted, you know, and it didn't affect the grander scale, and so he could actually write a good book.
I'd imagine that's why he wanted to do it, because he says, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to take this into a territory where I have, free reign to let my imagination go. Because who wants to, honestly, one of the reasons why I think we keep on having these Star Wars authors that we've never heard of before is because, who wants to work under the onerous conditions of the story group?
Yeah. I mean, Claudia Gray is the only one that seems to get any real leeway. And it's a miracle that she does, But
Well,
yeah,
it's
otherwise,
probably because she's a known quantity at this point. She's proven herself. So, but yeah, anybody else coming into it, it's like, they're pulling on, they're probably pulling on that leash hard right from the start. I imagine when they submit their treatment or their synopsis or anything, and we know this is part of the process. It goes through the story group, and they're just like, "Nah, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that."
Yeah, I mean, because it's amazing. I mean, James Luceno gave us Tarkin, which is part of the new canon. It was a great book. But that was probably just because, he had like a contract for one more book with Del Rey or something that he had to get out.
Right. And that was early on in the new Disney book canon. So like, they were probably still establishing the rules of what you couldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in that book, in my opinion, like the best thing about that book is it explains why is Palpatine doing what he's doing. But ultimately, I feel like Rise of Skywalker has even contradicted that. Because now
that
go ahead.
Dropped hints that they've still not picked up on, with like the Sith temple beneath the Jedi temple, know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And which actually Colin Trevorrow would have picked up on with Duel of the Fates, right?
Yes.
Great segue. Sorry, I'm like gritting my teeth here. I'm so I get so livid about this. And we're not, and I know Rob does too, and we're not the only ones. Because you know what, let's get into our next story here, Rob. But real quick, you do raise a great point that probably they're getting these unheard of authors because they're the only ones willing to go for the paycheck without any like real creative payoff, because that tight leash that Disney has on them. But this was Daisy Ridley was getting interviewed. I'm trying to remember what the name of the show was. Oh, it was on Jimmy Kimmel Live, who was being guest hosted at the time by Josh Gad. She was getting interviewed remotely. And so there wasn't a whole lot of editing or studio control, I guess. And she basically came out. Josh Gad was, well, here, I'm going to read a little bit. I've got the story from the Hollywood Reporter. Here's the headline. Daisy Ridley reveals original Rey Kenobi plot in Star Wars. This is from September 9th. The actress says the story behind her character was chaotic amid the changing of directors. Quote, at the beginning, there was toying with an Obi-Wan connection. There were different versions. This is Daisy Ridley talking. Then it really went to it was no one. And then it came to episode 9 and JJ pitched me the film, that being JJ Abrams pitched me the film and was like, oh yeah, Palpatine is granddaddy. Then 2 weeks later, he was like, oh, we're not sure. So it kept changing. So then even as we were filming, I wasn't sure what the answer was going to be. End quote of Daisy Ridley. Okay. So it's coming right from the mouth of the actress herself. There's so much disturbing about this. Talk about like not finishing up, loose threads like from the Tarkin book or something along those lines that could have been finished in episode 9 that were basically completely forgotten because obviously JJ came in, but JJ didn't just come in to like try and clean up things. He was really changing it up as he went along. It's like, yeah, it's going to be Palpatine. Oh, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
During filming.
Yeah. Because there's no art of Palpatine in the Art of Rise of Skywalker book.
Right, which we brought up in previous episodes when we were reviewing it. Right. Yes.
And not only like this highlights once again the blatant lies of J.J. Abrams. We already knew that he was a liar because of other, projects he's worked on, Star Trek.
Yeah.
But he said, I remember this quite clearly in an interview when they were discussing the parentage of Rey, that he already told us who Rey's parents were in The Force Awakens.
Right.
That's what he said.
Yeah. And there's no connective tissue between anything in The Force Awakens and that reveal in Rise of Skywalker. I mean, it's just not true. What JJ said there. Also, Kathleen Kennedy is a liar. Because she was explicitly asked, was Palpatine in the works the whole time? And she came right out and said, oh, yeah, this is a long time.
Yeah. In fact, she even made it sound like that was the plan since Force Awakens.
Right. Now, I mean, if she's hinting at that, yeah, we always kind of like toyed with the idea of Palpatine coming back or something. That's a true statement that it had been toyed with, but not that this was the plan. That absolutely is not an accurate statement at all by her.
They don't even get credit for that because that idea has been toyed with since the 90s.
Yes. And it became Dark Empire.
Right.
So yeah, go Tommy Veach, man. You did it great. and I still hope you got a paycheck from JJ for him stealing all of your ideas 20 years or 30 years later. But also, and I hate to do it, but like Daisy Ridley, how can Daisy Ridley came out, and I get it. I know it was marketing stuff, and she basically had to say this because she said, like, I don't think anybody, she was talking about episode 9. This is before episode 9 came out. And she said, I don't think anybody could have done this ending better. How can you say that? And then you're telling us that, wow, this story was getting completely made up as we went along. I mean, and you can watch the video. Link is in the show notes. You can watch the video of her talking to Josh Gad. She was clearly exasperated with production. How can she say that JJ did like the best job that anybody did with that movie? Go ahead.
To be fair to Disney, Daisy Ridley. Sorry. Like there were signs when before the Rise of Skywalker came out, like somebody she was asked in interviews about the whole Reylo thing, and she basically cringed and basically said that whole thing was problematic. Yeah. So she did have issues with what was going on in that movie prior to this. We know that, but absolutely, I'm sure it was in her contract that she couldn't really say anything bad about the movie and had to hype it up. It was the same thing with John Boyega. It was months after the movie came out that, he started dropping bombs on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with Oscar Isaac, I think has been a bit on the attack, as it were. But yeah, now some people have been saying, how did they let Daisy Ridley get away with this? I mean, I think this is like a reveal, but it's not. It's just a more direct statement of what we already knew, because we know the very famous statement that Daisy Ridley made about when Colin Trevorrow was telling her what her character's fate was, and she cried, right? Like that's what she had told us. We know it's abundantly clear that the plan Trevorrow had is not what ended up in Rise of Skywalker. So we basically already knew that there had been shifts and all this stuff. Perhaps what was just the most interesting here, again, the first thing being that JJ was changing his mind during production, whether or not her dad was going to be, or her granddad was going to be Palpatine. But the fact that, yes, the idea of her being a Kenobi was being toyed with, or, was being played around with. And at the time of The Force Awakens, there were supposed leaks that would get talked about on other Star Wars podcasts. We weren't doing TIE Fighter Renegades yet. That she was a Kenobi. And now I guess, a lot of people, it sucks because, and I was like that too, where I'm saying, like, guys, don't speculate, don't bother speculating, don't do it. Your leakers are full of shit and blah, blah, blah. No, maybe the leakers were actually giving them accurate information. Yeah, she's a Kenobi at the time, but then they completely changed their minds because of Rian Johnson and later on what JJ would do.
Well, I mean, I still think the large amount of quote Star Wars leaks and fan theories and speculation is total bullshit to this very day.
Yes.
It's that whole thing about, broken clock is right twice a day.
Right. Yeah. Fair. Yeah. That's fair.
And the other thing I take issue with is the people who say that, how can she get away with saying this? When you think for a goddamn second about what that implies, they don't fucking own her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who would say they do,
nobody, we all know that nobody owns anybody. You don't own human beings, period.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, in any case, this was a bomb dropped, without question. And, who's it? Star Wars Theory, the guy that made the Vader film. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who has over 2 million subscribers on YouTube. I mean, he's about as big on YouTube as one can get, or he's in that league. he did a video, a reaction when he heard this news. I mean, and for him, he flipped out. I mean, for him, he's a lot calmer than you or I perhaps would be. But he came right out and said, is like, Disney, you're making fan fiction. This isn't in my, the sequel trilogy is not in my headcanon. And sort of what I was alluding to earlier, I mean, sure as fuck isn't in mine. And this just bolstered the fact. What do you say, Rob?
I've said it before. Fan fiction can get messy.
Yeah, put down the T. Fan fiction gets messy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and his point was, and I thought it was very salient, is that how do you take over one of the, if not the biggest IP on the planet and not have a plan, of what you're going to do with it? And it's abundantly clear. There was, I mean, it's not like they didn't just have a plan as a trilogy. They didn't have a plan during the production of a single film.
Well, that's not entirely true.
Go for it.
They bought George Lucas's written script treatments for a sequel trilogy.
Right.
They had a plan.
Right.
They threw it out. Personally, I think it was Bob Iger who personally threw it out. Personally, I think he's had his hands dirty in the Star Wars trilogy from start to finish. And I personally don't think that JJ got to make the movies that he wanted to make. Now, whether or not the movies that he wanted to make would have been good or not, I don't know. But I pretty much get the strong impression that he was interfered with. And the thing is that he's kind of too nice of a guy and too much of a pushover.
Yeah. I could believe your narrative. I mean, I really could. The reality of where we sit right now, and actually, I think this could be a very nice segue into what I think is going to be our major topic for this episode. But the reality is that you have to cover the budget of, your blockbuster film today. You have to get so many asses in seats. You basically can't create a great film or a groundbreaking film or a film that, is thoughtful or that will be talked about for generations. You need a film that gets talked about by everybody for 5 minutes to get their asses in the seat. And then that's the end of it. You know?
But here's the thing is that you and I both know that there is a formula in Hollywood.
Yes.
And I firmly believe that was Bob Iger's philosophy all throughout this. And he basically had all these different ideas about letting the formula write the movie rather than letting the writers write the movie.
Yeah. It's very much the Marvel formula, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's abundantly, I think there's plenty of hints in the sequel trilogy that point at that, like the humor in Last Jedi. I don't feel like that was even Rian Johnson's humor. That's Marvel humor. Yeah. That got placed in there. And so, yeah, I agree. I think there is a formula there. I think a lot of the congratulations, I think you're right. And I think a lot of the congratulations that Rian Johnson got, like from Kathleen Kennedy, because she kept, before Last Jedi came out, she kept saying, on air, like, he has made this incredible movie. Rian Johnson is amazing, blah, blah, blah. Is that somehow, he got what for some could be seen as a challenging film, but fit it within the Marvel formula, right? And that's why they loved him so much. The problem is that Star Wars fans, or a lot of them anyway, did not. So, yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Rob. I think you're hitting it. Do you want to segue on to our next big topic? Or do you got more to say on this one? Go for it if you do.
Yeah, no, I've pretty much made my peace with this. I do not. I feel very akin with Star Wars theory. It's the sequel trilogy is garbage, and now I'm not in the group that is for excising it for canon or rewriting it. I still believe that we kind of just have to accept the bad parts of Star Wars and move on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you there. I think that you can make a body of material that heals from this.
Yeah.
I do think that's possible. I think we're on track, both with Zahn books, The Mandalorian, and maybe some other things coming down the road. It's going to take a while, but I think it can ultimately happen.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there has been good stuff under, Clone Wars Season 7 was good. Rebels was good. I mean, there's stuff under Disney's tutelage that was very good. So yeah, we can get there. And I agree with you. I think like the moving on and just like, yeah, we're just not going to talk about the sequel trilogy. We'll just, that's more of that. They're like the Jedi and the Mandalorian. It's like, yeah, there's this myth about them, but we forgot about it. And we did that inside of like 2 years. It's amazing. Anyway, we sneezed and it's over. Anyway, yeah. Well, so to the point of, making movies that have to appease the popcorn goers, as it were. One guy that kind of seems able to get away with not doing that, but still gets big budget options is Denis Villeneuve. And I know you're not the biggest fan of Blade Runner 2049, Rob. And I think people have valid critiques of that movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but again, I get where people are coming from when they don't dig it.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't love it either.
Yeah, right. It's not. It doesn't live up to Blade Runner.
No. Well, I mean, it shouldn't exist. No sequel to Blade Runner should exist. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. It is unnecessary. I mean, again, I enjoyed it, but I completely get where you're coming from. So with that said, Denis Villeneuve, who has been largely successful in Hollywood, including with what could be called challenging films, as in they make you think a little bit, which is nice to get, every once in a while, and rare to get today, certainly with a budget. He has been handed the keys to Dune, which is coming out in just a couple months, right, Rob? This is November 2020.
Well, I heard that there's a possibility it's going to be pushed back to like January 2021.
Oh, motherfucker.
Yeah, they're planning on pushing that and Wonder Woman 1984 back.
Yeah, I'd heard about Wonder Woman, but wow.
Because apparently Tenet's a bust.
Yeah, I have heard that as well. I mean, granted, that's a new IP, and that's always risky, even when you have Christopher Nolan involved, right?
Right.
So that doesn't exactly surprise me. Ah, boy. Okay. Well, anyway, when this does come out, it hope all right. Hold on. Mulan, right now, Mulan, the live action one, that was supposed to come out in March of this year of 2020. Am I correct in understanding? Because I haven't paid for a Disney Plus subscription, nor will I. Again, yay torrents. That got released on Disney Plus. They finally said, okay, fine, we're going to put it out there. But not only did you have to pay for a Disney Plus subscription, but you also had to pay $30 on top. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
I'd love to see the numbers on that. There's no way they're ever going to share it because I can't imagine that worked.
No, we'll never see the numbers on that. I mean, that's the whole point of these studios all having their own platforms, is that they control it 100% and never have to reveal a goddamn thing.
Yeah, right. I can't picture that this did well. Like I don't even want to bother with it, and it's because of Mushu not being in it. But regardless, I wasn't going to bother with it anyway. But I can't believe that strategy paid off at all. I mean, how can you do that to people?
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's being lambasted critically too.
Yeah,
for a number of reasons.
Good.
Like the critics are not happy with it. The Twitter mob is not happy about Disney basically paying off the Chinese government to use parts of China that they're currently where the Uyghurs are being oppressed.
Oh yeah, right. The Chinese Muslims. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of problems with this movie.
Yeah. So I guess I bring that up to say that, like, I can't picture Dune having any kind of home like that. Like, that's just not going to work. The best thing you could do would be to, like, make a deal with HBO where they air it exclusively, in my opinion, if they feel like it's just never going to come into theaters. But I imagine this is going to get a theatrical release. I forget what the budget was for this thing, but it's got to be fucking massive.
Yeah, I think it's enormous. And then and keep in mind too, we're only getting the first half.
Right. Which I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So, and I know we've talked about that previously, but we finally got a trailer for this thing. And Rob, I'm going to let this open up with you, man. I mean, we both know Dune, love Dune. You know, we're all about it. I do think like that you've got minutia down on me on this one a lot. Actually, you do that with a lot of things, which is no mean feat, folks. I consider myself a walking encyclopedia. And Rob, I mean, I always know what Rob's talking about, but I got him, and it goes vice versa, which is a rare thing as well. But I got to admit, like, there's times where Rob's got some nuggets on me, and I go, oh yeah, man. So anyway,
yeah. Now,
go ahead.
To be perfectly upfront, I did say something on the Telegram group that I ended up being mistaken about. I'm not going to really get into it, but I said that I already saw a major departure from the books, and I turned out to be mistaken about that. So I'll go ahead and just get that out there right to begin with. Not a big deal.
Imagine that, folks. You're listening to a podcast where someone is willing to admit that they might have been wrong.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
So
go ahead.
That aside, what I'm seeing in this trailer, it does seem like it has the potential to be a very faithful adaptation. Unfortunately, I'm not impressed.
Right.
I'm not impressed by the acting. I'm not impressed by the cast, and I think I actually despise the aesthetics of this movie.
Whoa! Wow!
Yeah, there's a heavy brutalist bent going on that
yes.
I don't like.
So for those that don't know, brutalist is an architectural style that was basically made famous by the Nazis. So anyway.
and my problems with brutalist architecture and that kind of styling is not because of the political associations. I don't give a shit. I just think it's fucking ugly.
Yeah, and it would. Or go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing is, say what you will about David Lynch's version of Dune, but to me, when you're showing off like a royalist, imperialist, feudal society that's highly advanced technology, like I picture what they showed in David Lynch's Dune of this extravagant opulence.
Yes. I didn't even think about that when I watched the trailer, but just thinking about it now as you say it, you're totally right. And even the original Dune canon, you don't have to bring in anything from Brian Herbert. We shouldn't even say his name. It's apparent that these, like the houses of the Landsraad, they're very artsy fartsy, to put it simply.
Yeah.
Everything is extravagant and opulence, like you said, and for it to be brutalist, even on Arrakeen. In fact, I'm pretty sure the book Dune describes heavily about that, how you like the two major cities.
That's the fascinating thing too, because there was a brutalist element in the 84 Dune, but it was with the Fremen. Right. And now it's like they've reversed it. And while I like the depiction of the Fremen sieges in the 84 Dune, I do feel like that I wouldn't call it a letdown, but it could have been better. I kind of like, there's a lot of fan art out there where they're showing like, the Fremen kind of living in these very sort of organic rock shaped, sieges that are very beautiful. And, you kind of like feel like you're stepping out of this barren desert into another world. And that's the way I always pictured it in my head. So I didn't like the depiction of the Fremen in the 84 Dune, and we haven't seen what it's going to be like in Denis Villeneuve's. I hope he has something cool, but yeah, as far as what they're showing off of the Imperium in Villeneuve's Dune, I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
No, I mean, a brutalist architectural style would make sense for, Gedi Prime, would make sense for the Harkonnens, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to like try and play it in that way, but it's important. I want people to understand that part of the reason Dune is so enduring as a book anyway, is that when you read it, it is so fully realized and it's so well described by Frank Herbert that yes, it absolutely matters whenever you bring it to another medium. What does it look like? Well, because go ahead.
I will push back on a little bit because like Frank Herbert doesn't really go and get like really descriptive about the way things look a lot of times. But the thing is that the tone he sets in the book and his style of writing is very evocative for the imagination.
Yeah, there's an attitude.
There's an attitude, and your mind fills in the blanks all on its own.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, all right. So we got the brutalist architecture. I mean, give me something more here that's bothering you with the trailer.
I'm not in love with the sandworm.
No. Oh, you brought up one of the things I want to bring up, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, and I understand why they're trying to do something different. And, Villeneuve's been in interviews talking about how they spent a lot of time on the sandworm and trying to make it something unique like we never seen before. And I get the reasoning. I just don't agree with it. Frank Herbert said it plainly enough that the only person who is ever visited Dune was John Schoenherr, the artist for the Dune cover arts. And he is the one who came up with that design of the sandworm with the trifoil mouth.
Right, that you see in the 84 Lynch.
Right.
Yeah. I was a little bothered, not to get conspiratorial. I was a little bothered that at the end, I mean, that's basically at the end of this trailer is when you get the reveal of the sandworm. My biggest problem with it is that when it opens its mouth, it looks like an eye, and it's meant to look like a one eye on purpose. I think that's abundantly clear. And that's an artistic, but I think also a cultish decision that I don't appreciate. But what am I going to do about that? And am I going to go ahead?
I mean, I don't know if he's doing that consciously. There's some other things in here where it is kind of apparent that he is being somewhat inspired by David Lynch in some areas, like with the Baron coming out of that mud bath or that spice bath or what it is. I mean, that's pure Lynch.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, the sandworm, I wasn't impressed either. I'll go with you on that. I mean, I'll say overall watching it, I have one major problem with it, but overall watching it, I more or less liked what I saw. I was like, this is okay. Like at the very least, I wasn't seeing anything really where I was like, oh, no, I don't want to touch this film. I'm not interested, blah, blah, blah. I was impressed by the style of the trailer in that there was no joke at the end. That was very comforting to me because I'm so tired. It's just something you wait for with the trailer. They'll do this epic trailer. They'll give you the title of the film. And then, what's coming at the very end is there's going to be some kind of a joke.
Yeah.
And they're always stupid. Or it might've been funny in the movie if you didn't play it over and over again with the fucking trailer. But they didn't do that at all in this. And I was very, very pleased by that. So I like that they didn't have a Marvel-esque trailer. That was good. My only major problem with it was I don't like the look of Paul Atreides. And I don't know why it didn't come together for me in the stills, in the promo stills that we got. But I really, really don't like the look of Paul Atreides. He looks too young, too disheveled. Like he just doesn't look like royalty to me in any way.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you got?
He kind of looks like a mopey YouTuber.
Yeah, it's like they're like, who can we find that looks like Robert Pattinson 20 years ago?
Or who can we find that? And God, I never want to mention this fucking name again, but he looks like David Dobrik.
Oh, ouch! All right. Yeah. I don't get this. I get it that maybe they think that this is like that dark hero look that that everybody goes gaga over. Go ahead.
Personally, I don't have a problem with the age because
he was
even
15,
in the books,
right?
Yeah, well, he was 15, and not only that, I think even Reverend Moham kind of said that he looked young even for his age.
That's a good point. No, you're right. See, these are the nuggets, folks. This is where Rob like comes out to me and says, "Brian, sit down. We're going to school." And,
but he does have that, that very modern what teenagers look like today.
Mm-hmm.
Look.
Yeah. I just it didn't work for me, and it's not. I don't think it's because I've been spoiled on Kyle MacLachlan necessarily. It's just. I don't, because what was his name in Frank Herbert's Dune in the 2000 miniseries? I forget the guy's name, but he was fine. I didn't mind his.
Oh, Alec Newman.
Alec Newman, that's it, right? I didn't mind his look. I thought it worked.
Yeah, he was. I think I think he was too old, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that part like kind of bothered me, but then I'm also not going to let someone's look, spoil the film for me just because it wasn't what I, had in my mind's eye.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, we're not the it demographic anymore. This movie isn't for us, so, hey, like I'm even being told on Twitter is like, oh no, like, this is getting my kids into Dune. And I tried so hard and nothing I could say could get my kids to ever read Dune. And now it's happening. And I'm so happy. Okay, good for you. Whatever.
Do you think that so who's Warner Brothers is putting this out, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which, by the way, one only need look at Warner Brothers' treatment of Babylon 5 to see that they really don't give a shit about science fiction. But regardless, do you think Danica is on the take with Warner Brothers? Do you think Comic Book Girl 19?
Oh, yeah. I've thought that since the very first time she started doing that Dune book club, because she's putting out merch.
Right.
She's basically crowdfunding it with Dune merch. There's no way in hell that didn't get a rubber stamp from the almighty, Bobo the Clown.
The aforementioned Brian Herbert. Yeah. I mean, because she's that Dune book club. So what did she start that? Like 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that?
Yeah.
Before production, I think, before they broke shovel.
Right.
And yeah, I think that was a very, very careful plant of a marketing campaign. Mm-hmm. And from the very moment she started it, because she's just, look, Rob and I are nuts about Dune, and we're about as nuts as you can get about Dune, and Rob even more so. She's above and beyond, like she's like beyond kind of nuts about this, and
she's kind of cultish about it.
Yes, yeah, to the point that look, it's fucking creepy. Okay,
yeah,
like how you're acting about this, and man, okay, I'm glad. Thank you. I thought of it. I wanted to ask it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. There's just no way, because I mean the way that Bobo handles the IP. I mean, his asshole's tighter than a snare drum.
and actually to add proof, we know he's looking at younger demographics, and he's wanted younger demographics. That is a major push for him, right? Because of comic books.
He just wants fucking money.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
absolutely.
If it's not under his control, he doesn't care. Because there are people who've tried to do comic books before, and he's slapped down the almighty C&D. Yeah.
And also, I feel like he has taken Dune in a direction that is ultimately anti-intellectual, or at the very least, nowhere near as intellectual as his daddy.
That's my whole problem with his books.
Right.
They shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's more Dune books with his name on it now than his father's, that's a problem.
That's a slap to the face. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you completely on that.
If you're not gonna spend the, this kind of almost gets on something that Brian and I were talking about before the show started. But like there's no more heroes anymore.
Yeah.
There's nobody to look up to. And everybody's basically taken the greatness and the wisdom of the past and just tried to put their own stamp on it.
Yeah, I mean, once the creator's gone, and for example, George Lucas, Frank Herbert, Gene Roddenberry, once the creator's gone, everybody's writing fan fiction, in my opinion. And, the creator doesn't have to be dead either. George Lucas just stepped away, but yeah, I mean, that's really the point that I've come to. And, it's got me thinking, like, I'm scared to death of what the fuck Apple did with Isaac Asimov's work.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts on that trailer, Rob? I don't want to get necessarily off the Dune train here, but
no, I'm reserving judgment.
Yeah, maybe they did it right.
Yeah, I don't trust Apple.
Oh no, yeah, I mean I don't either. Not for anything. Even if Steve Jobs were alive, I wouldn't trust Apple. But
maybe especially more so.
Yeah. Well said. Ooh, anyway, the dead are not spared on this show, folks. So, yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, anyway, but there's the point: is that really once the creator's gone, everything's fan fiction.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't have a problem with fan fiction. Fan fiction can be awesome. But the thing is Dune is something else. Like, and the apologetics I always get are, well, like, oh, well, you can't expect him to have the same writing style as his father. No, I don't. But I at least expect you to have the intelligence and the wisdom, or at least attempt at having the kind of intelligence and wisdom that was put into those books. And there's no sign of it. It's just a bunch of fucking schlock. It's pulp fiction.
Woo. Yeah. No, I agree. And again, like, I mean, you read not even Chapter House. Like you read God Emperor, you read Heretics, and I mean, you're pushing the human possibilities of understanding to their limits in a very real way in fiction.
Yes. In fact, not only that, that's like, if you understand that, you get the point of the books.
Right. And let's be clear here. That's not going to sell books very well. It sure as hell is going to sell them if your name isn't the guy that wrote the first one that blew everybody's mind. And, but I mean, to do anything less than keep pushing the boundaries of the human intellect is an insult. I don't think it's a surprise that that's why they started off with prequels, with the house books. But yeah, I agree. Dune is something else. It is something special. Go ahead.
In fact, I remember when I read House Atreides, the first book in that house book, the very moment when I was like, oh no. They literally stole a moment from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, where the cloaked ship fires on another ship and makes it look like the Atreides ship was the one that was doing the shooting.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, you can't even have your own goddamn ideas.
When you should have plenty in a universe as rich as Dune.
Yeah.
I mean, basically everybody's copied Dune for the last, 50 years or 60 years. And yeah, what a shame.
Yeah, and now you're imitating the imitators.
Right.
That is it's not just a tragedy. It's a fucking crime.
Yeah. Now I think your point, which you've hinted at and really driven home in previous episodes as well. And I know you've done so online and gotten in some little scuffles with some people in the Twitterverse on the matter. But the fact that Brian Herbert ultimately is the guy that has to stamp, he has to put the approval on anything that goes out. With that in mind, do you think that, again, like I kind of started this conversation off with, Villeneuve can seem to get some level of intellectualism past the bean counters, past the approvals. You know, do you have hope for this film, or do you think that Brian Herbert's required stamp is going to ultimately make it a shit show?
Well, we know that Brian Herbert was a consultant on the film.
Yep.
For one. Two, and really this says everything to me. The amount of time that they spent coming up with the contracts for the sale of the movie rights took so long. Indicates to me that there was a laundry list of stipulations.
Yeah. And you know, the more stipulations, the less creative you really get to be, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel that this is going to suffer from the same thing we were just talking about with the Star Wars books.
Right. I mean, because it's important to bring it up. I mean, even people who are just as critical of a lot of modern Hollywood as we are, they're putting some hopes on this film, saying, no, you know what, this film might actually be like the great thing that Hollywood's been trying to do for 20 years now.
And I get it. Villeneuve has the talent. I'm not knocking the guy. I am not knocking the guy. But the thing is that he's a fan. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but I'm willing to bet that because he's so passionate about Dune, he was willing to make compromises to have his involvement in it.
I would laugh my ass off if we finally get to sit down in January and when it says directed by, it says Alan Smithy. I would love that so much. Yeah. Because there's got to be a time frame where he falls out of contract or parts of the contract if the movie doesn't get released within a certain amount of time. But well, anyway, I don't know. That's all simple tricks and nonsense. We don't need to go down that stuff, but that would be so funny. Or when it comes out on home video, whatever that looks like, that it says Alan Smithy, that'd be great too. But anyway, yeah, I'm still cautiously optimistic. I'm still feeling like, yeah, this could be great, even not just very good, but could be great. I do like Villeneuve's work. I do think he has a lot of talent. But you know, after listening to you, Rob, now I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And your point that people have to get is how much, if there's anything shitty coming out with Dune, the first person you point at, the first person you look at is Brian Herbert. Because he has the ultimate yay or nay on anything when it comes to Dune. And so, well, we're going to know who to blame, I think, ultimately.
He's Emperor Commodus sitting over the franchise with his thumb hovering.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I feel like, you know, Warner Brothers can certainly strong arm. I mean, they're not wearing an eye patch and carrying around a tin cup anywhere. You know, they're no slouches themselves. So I feel like they could strong arm Brian Herbert a little bit if they needed to.
See, I don't know. I think that I have a feeling like Brian Herbert speaks their language. So okay. Like maybe Warner Brothers was the ideal studio for him because they understand, you know, the economics of creative control.
Okay. Yeah. That's very, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know, you know, because there was a Warner Brothers like 30 years ago that was very laissez-faire and would allow some amazing shit to get made that no other studio would have touched. And it's clearly not that Warner Brothers anymore. And I don't want to pretend that it is. Go ahead.
I will say I do think Brian Herbert is probably getting away with more than any intellectual property holder since George Lucas.
Yep.
In fact, I think Brian Herbert approached all of the studios and basically said, I want the George Lucas deal.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers is the one that said yes.
Yeah. I mean, Warner Brothers has been trying to, they've been wanting a great science fiction franchise for a long time. and I think that's very clear. And they've had opportunities and they've fucked them up as well. So I don't know. None of what I'm exploring here. I'm trying to look at some kind of bright side, but then I'm like, nah, no, probably not.
And hey, if you have a different opinion of me, that's fine. I know. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I trust me. I like Brian said, we're huge Dune fans. I want this. I want to be proven wrong. I really do. But just with 20 years of putting up with this guy, I know his MO. Yeah.
We might get some really cool merch out of this anyway. Might get some good merchandise, board games, all that kinds of fun stuff. Yeah.
Maybe I can finally get a Dune RPG that doesn't cost, $1,000 on eBay.
Oh, fucking A. Yeah. Boy, that was great, though. Get the PDF, folks. Chronicles of the Imperium, was that the one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember reading through that, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Yeah. Why isn't this getting released? Oh.
Yeah. And even 10 years ago, I was looking at that and seeing it on eBay, and back then it was about $300. And I was going, oh, it's a little bit more than I want to pay. I'll just wait until I can find a better deal. And, now here we are, and it's going for like $1,000 on eBay.
Yeah. God damn it. Well, anyway, the trailer as a trailer wasn't bad. As far as how it executes a lot of the visuals that we ended up with is, I think, very much the question here. I know Villeneuve can tell a good story. So this is another one where we're going to have to wait and see, what ends up happening with it.
And I will reiterate again, I do think this has the possibility, no matter whether it's, really good or not, it has the possibility of being the most faithful adaptation of the novel.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Still suits look pretty good.
I wish they didn't look so off the shelf.
Oh, right. We talked about that. Yeah, because it looked like motocross. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Dune Motocross Edition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nothing beats. I'm sorry. Just like, and I have to say it again. In every respect to the aesthetics of this movie, the '84 Dune movie did it better.
Yes.
In every way.
Yes. I completely agree with that statement. Well, again, this is something we're just going to have to wait and see on. All right. Well, we want to wrap this one up and get into some picks.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So let's talk about some good stuff. God damn it. Rob, if you want to start this one off.
Yeah, sure.
You've got a game listed. Tell me all about it.
Yeah. And it's kind of a game. It's not really, it's kind of more in the tradition of a mod, even though it's not really a mod either. I think it's being a game created in the Unreal Engine. But anyway, there's basically this one guy, his name is Etienne, and I forget his last name. It's really hard to pronounce too. But he's been working on this Star Wars game called Star Wars Redemption. And about a month ago, the YouTubers, the Star Wars YouTubers, caught wind of it, and it kind of blew up on the internet, and rightly so, because this game looks really just phenomenal. It takes place during the Clone Wars and features a new female Jedi character as the protagonist, and it's kind of like a platformer almost, in my impression. Maybe I'm kind of almost like a God of War style game.
Oh, so like a third party or a third person adventure.
Yeah, third person action adventure.
Yeah.
And it's done in the Clone Wars animated series art style, and it looks just phenomenal. And what this guy is able to play, that this is like a master class animator. He is really good at what he does. And so I did leave a link in the show notes to a video that does a pretty good job of kind of showcasing this, and pay attention to this video's show notes, because it'll direct you to the creator's YouTube and where you can support him. And I highly encourage you to do that, because at one point the creator was planning on putting the project down and moving on. And then, like I said, he got noticed last month, and he was kind of reinvigorated by the fan community. So this guy needs a cheering squad to keep him going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I checked out the video, Rob, that you'd shared. You actually shared it in the Telegram group, I think, initially. And yeah, I was blown away. I watched it. I was like, wow, yeah, keep going. There's a part of me, I don't think this guy's doing this. And I want to bring this up because on a recent episode of Sovryn Tech, I had said that I worry a lot of people start making these fan games, as it were. And I hate to even call it that because this is so well done. That I think a lot of times they are doing it hoping to build an audience out of the franchise that they're making a game for, but they know they're going to get shut down sooner or later. And then they pivot to an original IP, as in a new IP. And then they hope that they get to keep some of that overflow of that fan base interested in the game that they're making. And it feels like marketing. And I think there are very clever people doing this sort of thing. I don't think that's the case here. I want to make that clear that I don't think that that's the case here. And I hope, one of the areas that I feel like, well, George Lucas certainly, and I think Disney has kind of been on the right side of this for a while, where they are very forgiving to, as long as the fans aren't exactly making money, they are very open to, fan productions.
Yeah, well, there was the Old Republic, the Knights of the Old Republic remake that they shut down.
That got shut down, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so maybe not. Yeah. Well, anyway, I hope this goes the distance. As a bit of a game developer myself, in fact, actually, the day that we're recording this, I am celebrating 6 years since I started developing my first game, which had come out, and I've had another one since then even. So I appreciate what this takes, when you're just doing it very much for passion and you're not going to have a big marketing machine behind you. And you just want to make a game that puts out there what you want out there in the gaming world. And that's clearly what's going on with the Star Wars Redemption game. I'm impressed. I hope, yes, absolutely. Go support him. I hope that this goes the distance and gets a finished release of sorts because it's that good. And certainly EA, maybe Squadrons is going to be good, but EA's track record is not the best. Granted, Fallen Order was pretty good, but yeah, I really do hope this goes the rest of the way. Anything else on this, Rob?
No.
Was there any music? Is he doing anything music wise?
I do think that he has somebody with him that's working on music, but I don't think he's doing the music himself.
That's a very underrated part of a lot of Star Wars fan productions. A lot of times they'll bring in just some independent composer.
Yeah.
And some of the music for soundtracks for fan productions with Star Wars has been tremendous. In fact, far better than the solo soundtrack. Not that that's
hard.
A
low bar.
Yeah, right. Not that that's difficult to do, but there've been some real wins in some of the, shall we say, extracurricular soundtracks in Star Wars. I hope that shines as much as anything else. Of course, if you just use, what John Williams has already created out there, that's not going to hurt you either. But in any case, yeah, very exciting looking game. I'm intrigued to see where this goes. So, all right. Well, I guess I'll get into my pick for this episode. This is the thing. I think we got into this argument in TIE Fighter Renegades in our history here, Rob. This is the thing that I think, at the very least, it's better than A New Hope. I don't know if I want to say it's better than Star Wars overall. I love this movie to death. I've talked about it many times already, but something that I had pre-ordered a long time ago finally got released. And it is now it's also available in 4K, but I don't give a shit about 4K, but they released the same package for Blu-ray. And it comes with a DVD if you're still in DVD, and good for you if you are. And I mean that. But the 2-disc limited edition or limited collector's edition of 1980s Flash Gordon, with of course the dearly departed Max von Sydow in it, who boy, was The Force Awakens his last work?
Yeah, I think so.
And
sad, isn't it?
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Well, he has a great filmography beyond that. So in any case, of course he played Ming the Merciless in this. I just love this movie, and the Arrow Films or Arrow Video, depends on what they're doing. They're the ones that put it out. They're like Shout Factory, where they're doing these great restorations of these kind of cult classic films, and they'll put them out there. In fact, Arrow did a great re-release of RoboCop last year. They did a great re-release of Big Trouble in Little China. They did an awesome release of Guyver, not MacGyver, Guyver, which also starred Mark Hamill, by the way. But anyway, they did this. I haven't seen them really do this yet, which is probably why they were big on the pre-orders. But it's a gorgeous set, 2-disc, has a ton of special features, comes with a great poster, a full-on book full of essays about the film. And reading the essays for this movie was very vindicating, because they basically all said the same thing that I've been saying on varying shows, varying podcasts for years, that, I guess people just don't get it, what some of these movies are trying to do. People don't get like what Buck Rogers was trying to do in the 1980s, what Flash Gordon was trying to do. Like, they just could not appreciate a really sexy good time. And these writers of these essays are all, professional critics, for whatever that's worth. And they're all saying the same thing. Like, we don't get it. Why didn't people go nuts over this movie? It has everything you could want out of a film. And so it's very vindicating to read this. This is one of the best Blu-ray releases I've ever seen. I've listened to the audio commentary by the director. That was a lot of fun. Of course, you never get those online, or at least you rarely get them. But it is just jam-packed with features. If I'll put the link in the show notes to it, take a look at the amount of features available on this. There are multiple audio commentaries. There's even like episodes of the Flash Gordon cartoon. There's all these making specials. It has to be 2 discs to fit all this stuff on there. It's really phenomenal. And the book that it comes with is really worth it alone. But just a really underappreciated film, in my opinion. Most people know the soundtrack. They love the Queen soundtrack, but and it is great, and it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. But I think this film is always, if someone hasn't watched it in a long while, it's always worth a revisit. And I'm telling you can't go wrong with this set from Arrow Video. Thoughts on Flash Gordon, Rob?
There's a lot of, links between Flash Gordon and Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Actually, if it wasn't for Flash Gordon, we wouldn't have Star Wars, because that was the movie that George Lucas had originally wanted to make. But he couldn't get the rights. Yeah, well, Dino De Laurentiis owned the rights. Right. Yeah, exactly. Who also made the 84 Dune, by the way, or produced it. Right. so indirectly, you can kind of thank, Dino De Laurentiis for some of the greatest science fiction movies of the 70s and 80s. Yeah, absolutely. Either because he made them, or, he was holding the rights and forced somebody to make something else, that ended up being great. In fact, that's a funny thing. So when during the director's commentary, he tells a story of why he ended up being chosen as the director. And it's because the other director that Dino De Laurentiis was originally going to get for Flash Gordon wasn't taking, the director was basically saying that he says, how can you take this movie and this script that seriously? He said, but you have to understand that Dino De Laurentiis wasn't fucking around with this movie. He really he said he was talking to another director, and he said to the director, he says, you need to keep one thing in mind. This is Dino De Laurentiis talking. Imagine him with a very heavy Italian accent. He says, you need to understand something. Flash Gordon saves the fucking world. And he was, serious as a heart attack about that. Like, that you're not going to make fun of this movie. You're not going to make fun of this script. Flash Gordon's going to save the world, goddammit. And it was so cute to hear that story, of just how much, Dino De Laurentiis, the De Laurentiis family is such a powerhouse in film in general. But for him to be just like a child, about it, like, you don't understand, this is my hero, you're going to treat him with respect. I just thought that was very touching. And I felt understood,
because I get where people think the movie is a joke. I get that the director went with a absurdist style to some degree. But at the same time, when Flash Gordon is like tossing that watermelon thing and playing football against Clytus's men, and Queen's soundtrack is going, and Dale Arden is like cheerleading him, I grin ear to ear every time. And I have goosebumps going right now just thinking about that scene. I just think that's so much fun and such like great, simple action that sells. Go ahead.
It is a very fun movie. In fact, another thing that makes me grin every time I watch the movie is just about every scene that Brian Blessed is in.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. The director said that too. He was talking about Brian Blessed as Voltan, of course. And he's perfect in this. He says, I had to get in Brian Blessed. He's like, I worked with him on this other film. He says, I just had to have that energy, because if something bad happens to the main character, which does happen within the film, early on, he's like, you don't want to lose the tone. You don't want to lose the energy of the film. So you got to bring somebody that brings in so much energy, nothing can take the film down. And you just hit it, Rob, because that's Brian Blessed, I mean, the amazing beard, everything about him, is just pure fucking energy. And the film never slows down, largely because of him. I think you're totally right. What else you got?
Well, I really appreciate the story that you told about Dino De Laurentiis, because here again, we're kind of coming back to a theme about how, all of the heroes are dead. Why can't we have that kind of studio interference in a movie? Of course, it's not even really interference at this point. With a movie like this, is like, this is the way that you as a studio exec can actually make a movie great and support it, is by having a vision and, making sure that is understood all the way from the director to the actors.
Yeah. And you really need somebody with Dino's stroke to be able to pull that off. And I wonder if like those guys just don't exist anymore, because that's my point. He was one part, like studio exec and one part artist. Yes.
And there's no savants like that left in Hollywood.
Yeah. No, I think you're totally right. And because, I mean, again, he was behind all that lavish style, which is totally on display in Flash Gordon, is also on display in Dune, right? Like you were talking about in Lynch's Dune. I mean, that's probably, I mean, as much as it's Lynch, I'm sure it's Dino saying, oh yeah, there must be gold everywhere. I mean, like I could just kind of picture him, going nuts about it and getting it, yeah, we don't have the guys that grew up with these characters and who are just so fucking passionate about it that no, you can't screw up the story or I'll fire you. And that's what Dino was, what a shame. It's all downhill now. God damn it.
And the cool thing was the movie left a legacy too, because I very much feel that like Masters of the Universe took a lot of pages from Flash Gordon.
Another film that, I think the director went somewhat absurdist with, but a lot of the people involved just said, well, we're going to have as much fun as we can with this.
Yeah. That's the thing though, is like it had an absurdist element, sure. And in its styling and its panache, but at the same time, it took it way more seriously than the source material.
Yeah. And it's like the actors themselves, like Frank Langella, like he talks about all the time, he's how much he loved playing Skeletor. And I think he even said he basically didn't even listen to the director. He just went, full Shakespeare on it. Yeah. He just took it and ran. And oh man, yeah, it's so awesome when these guys aren't just doing shit for a paycheck and they want to have a good time on set, that's a lost art. God damn it.
Well, maybe it's more so that just the actors aren't able to express their art that way anymore.
Sure.
You look at just like we were talking about John Boyega, that's somebody who I think can deliver. He's a good actor, but he's being held back. Yeah. And he'll tell you as much. Right. Yeah. That's a great point too. There's just, well, again, that gets down to where these, studios are just holding the purse strings so tight and, like they're just strangling everybody on set, like Bob Iger and whoever else, I'm sure, or Brian Herbert in other cases. Damn it.
Anyway, I thought we were ending on a happy note, but but you can go watch Flash Gordon, and I guarantee you, if anything, you'll be laughing at the end, either at just how much fun it was, or maybe it was just ridiculous to you, but you'll still laugh. What do you got?
That is the point, is that we still have several decades of just truly great art that's still out there, and a lot of people still haven't experienced to this day. Right,
which is why we do the picks most of the time, is to introduce people to something new, or something old that might be new to them that you didn't know. And I try to make it a point, folks. I try not to put Amazon links, or at least not ones that give me credit in the show notes. I don't need to make a buck off of this, folks. Like, I just want other people out there to experience what I've experienced, the joy that I've experienced. I just want to spread the love, goddammit. And I know Rob's the same way. Like, we want great stuff out there, and for people to enjoy themselves with it. So anyway, Flash Gordon and Star Wars Redemption, two things that you can that you can check out right now. It's not something you have to wait for. There's not a pre-order bonus of any kind, nothing of the sort. This is just stuff to love and enjoy. So, Rob, I think we've got it. I think that's an episode in the can.
It's a wrap.
Yeah. I think I'll save the temperature check. I want to do another episode this month. We'll see where we can get with that. But feeling good. Are you feeling good about Mandalorian season 2 though? Are you excited?
I mean, yeah, sort of excited. Like I said, I'm still kind of experiencing some Star Wars fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure I'll get over it when the season finally airs. But for right now, yeah, I'm not feeling too great about Star Wars. Star Wars and I need a break.
Sometimes, relationships, you gotta take that time out. And
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling fairly excited about it. I'm just gonna say this quick. Like, I've been Ellen and I have been rewatching Babylon 5, and when you watch something that fucking great, it just depresses you about everything else, So I'm not like in a hurry for Mandalorian season 2 to come out. As to where with season 1, I was definitely like, yeah, all right, come on, let's drop it. Let's make it happen. Let's do this now. I'm not feeling that, but overall, we'll see.
Yeah.
So that's the other message of this episode. We'll see. Anyway, Rob, as always, best time, man. We'll wrap this one up, and we will see all of you on the other side.